Hello and welcome back for a new video. I am blessed to do this video. This will be a topic that has been addressed by a lot of good and great content creator, but also personal trainer and sport professional of the field. This will be a top 10 video exercise for bodybuilding purposes. I am blessed and very honored to have been requested this video by Coach Bolt Obniman. There will be a link in the description below to check his channel. The guy is one of the best content creator and was the most genuine guy I've seen on YouTube yet, and he's part of an amazing community which compose guys like Alex of Alpha Destiny, Alexander Leonidas. There is PG Coaching, there is a Massive Steve Show, there is Natural Hypertrophy, obviously. So yeah, this is like a follow-up video of all these content creators that want to share with you their best exercise, basically in a bodybuilding context, and well, I'm happy to oblige. So basically the ranking system will be first that the availability of exercise, is it easy to do it or not, the fact that is it easy to learn and easy to perform, like in terms of a form manner, in terms of the muscle targeting manner too. Is there a lot of stress for the joint, which is also a very good factor to take in account, and also my own personal experience with it and what kind of variation you could do if you are plateauing or something does not feel wrong, or something doesn't feel good, or you just want to cycle and rotate variation to avoid overuse or any kind of other problem. I am a natural champion bodybuilder. I've done a lot of competition. Naturally, I've been training soon for 11 years natural, and yeah, I've done quite a lot of exercise in my lifting career. So this is the top 10 I would choose. There we go. The first exercise I want to talk about is the high incline barbell press. The purpose is simple. You go with a barbell, you incline the bench around 60 degrees, and you press. There are several good points about this exercise. The first one is that you can basically go a bit heavier than with normal standing or seated press, just because the incline allows you to have a much more powerful position to press from. The second one is that it helps recruit the upper chest. Upper chest is something for natural and even many lifters, even when they are enhanced, that is often lacking. It is both because the resistance profile and the angle is kind of tricky sometimes to have them, but also because of the sternum and ribcage angle. It is much more appropriate for our body to recruit everything that is lower here than here. So having an angle where you can recruit the anterior delt, the triceps, but the upper chest has no choice but to also work is kind of good. So you can basically do this press and have your shoulder and your upper chest that are being recruited, especially if you go full range of motion. So that's a very good point. The third good point I would go with about this exercise is the joint stress. The position, since it's a bit inclined, allows you to go really hard, slightly heavier compared to normal overhead press, but also hit very good the whole deltoid, and with minimum stress on the rotator cuff. Basically, if you go with really high volume on this exercise just to check what is sore, you will most likely the next day be sore around the rear delt rather than inside deep into the shoulder with a rotator cuff. This is what happened to me the first time I did it. It was with dumbbell variation, and I was actually amazed that I would get rear delt soreness from a press. But for anyone that is doing pretty hard work and heavy work on this high incline press variation, you will see that it's actually kind of a whole shoulder that is pumped. So this is a great point. And on the fourth aspect that is great with this exercise, it is the learning curve. In bodybuilding and strength training in general, there is so many exercises, but some exercises are way better or faster to teach and to also do than others. Overhead presses, there is always this component, of pressing overhead and having your head tucked back and then pushing it forward to align everything. Well, with high incline press, you have nothing to worry about this side, because the barbell is supposed to basically go right in front of you around the shin level. So one of my cues is that it is touching my beard, and you go right here and then you go right there. You're basically pushing a straight line, so there is no thinking about, oh, I need to do a little bit of this and I have to have my angle of the elbow to do that. No, nothing of that. You just have to press up and down. So when you want to just power through and go really hard and intense with your set, this is amazing. And that is why this exercise is easily rotated with free barbell, dumbbell, and also Smith machine. This is for me one of the best exercises you can do. The second exercise I really like and I recommend you to do are weighted chin-up, but not any chin-up, the neutral grip chin-up. And the reason why is simple. This is the joint friendliest, the one with the most ability to power through, and the one so you can basically grind out and use as much muscle mass as possible, and also the one that will allow you to go the heaviest. Compared to a pronated grip pull-up, the issue will be that even if you can use your back muscle, basically your torso jaw and your lats, you will be limited by the muscles that you can recruit in your arms. It will only be the brachioradialis and the brachial. There will be little to no biceps involvement. So in a context where you want to hit both the elbow flexors muscle and the back, this will be an exercise that will be slightly inferior. And there is also the fact that load-wise, when you go weighted, it will be much harder to actually go heavier and to progress even on this exercise than with the neutral grip. The second reason, and it's regarding the supination grip on the chin-up, is that there is the safety aspect and also the joint longevity aspect. On the safety, we are in a very stretched position at the bottom, and we are supposed to have straight arm. In this position, you are putting the biceps tendon at risk. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking that because we are natural and because we can condition our tendons with time, we are basically invincible, or at least we have a lot of room before actually getting hurt. The problem is that with weighted chin-up, you are totally putting this rule on the side, because you can really go heavy. To give you an idea, I have short biceps and I have a slight valgus. We'll talk about that later. The short biceps is slightly more vulnerable in a straight position like that than the longer biceps. When I was doing a lot of supinated weighted chin, I would go as high as 65 kg of weight, so basically 3 plate and squats. In that position, I could do 8 sets of 3 reps with low rest. What happened is that each time when I would go do my workout, go home, rest, the next day I would be extremely sore right here in this area where it's basically just tendon, and my bicep didn't even really feel like it had worked. The issue is that for some people, of course, it will be a great exercise. Everything is aligned perfectly for you to work your biceps, and you also have some back, but for others it will not really work. And the thing is that in that position where you are resting and then you go like this, it is all tendon, even if you have really long biceps. And I am slightly above 80 kilo, so you go 80 plus 60, it is basically 140 kilo, or 315 pounds, something like that. That is, boom, like this, right here. This is very dangerous, and if you see no or little street lifting athletes do supinated grip chin-up, it is exactly for this reason. All of them at some point around the 3 plate and a half, 4 plate, they will tear a biceps or they will injure their elbow, and that's why all of them are doing pronated grip. Even if you're weaker, there is much more room for progression with time and also less joint problem. And that is why the neutral grip for most of you will be much better. You can go heavier, you can go really heavy, you have way less to worry about joint wise. You can recruit the whole elbow flexor complex, so biceps, brachial, brachioradial. You can even add in some long head of the triceps because it is an assistant of the adduction of the elbow, and you will also hit pretty hard your lat. So in regard to the progression aspect and the joint longevity aspect, neutral grip will be much better. And if you want some variation, you can go with pose rep, you can do tempo rep, and you can also add in fat grips, which I personally like. If you want to bias more the arm and the grip work rather than the back work. To give you an example, I am currently at 4 plate for kind of a grind, not so clean rep, normal natural grip chin up, and for the fat grip I do a clean 3 plate and a half rep. The third exercise that I have for you is the clock-off press. So the clock-off press refers to a snatch grip behind the neck strict press in weightlifting world. It has been popularized by the man that you heard the name of this exercise, which is Dimitri Kloklov, and the guy is obviously a unit. Of course, the guy is a beast, and of course he made the exercise popular, but there is much more to this exercise than just looking cool. The first component is that the clock-off press will be a prehab exercise for your shoulder, meaning that you will risk much less injuries by doing this exercise than just doing front press. The reason is simple. First, you have to strengthen and keep the external rotator of the shoulder strong. Clock-off press does that. Second, you have to maintain great external rotation mobility of the shoulder and thoracic spine extension too. Clock-off press does that. You have to balance as much as possible the strength of your deltoid with the strength of all your shoulder blade girdle muscles, so the traps, the rhomboids, and so on and so forth, to create a stable base for you to press. Clock-off press does this. And finally, too much pressing can actually hurt your wrist mobility. It can actually keep you from doing very heavy presses just because your wrist can keep up. While clock-off press allows you to go sneak in some pressing without being limited by your wrist mobility. That can be an issue. So for all these reasons, clock-off press is a fantastic assistance movement for your presses. Whatever if you're a bench press specialist, or whatever if you're into strict liftings or doing weighted dips, whatever any reason you could have, this exercise alone has allowed me to go more than a decade of lifting without sustaining a big traumatic injury to my shoulder, and I am currently having the second time this type of injury, and it is again a clock-off press that allows me to sneak in some basically prehabbing work for my shoulder without stressing it too much, and it also allows me to ping back the injury, or at least the pain, and gauge this pain for me to know if I will be able to go really hard or not. But all in all, a great, fantastic exercise. It is not made for maxing out, it is not made to do really heavy, intense, close to 1 RM work, but for volume work, for assistant work, for finisher, it is a great exercise. The third exercise that I have for you, since you probably can tell since I quoted chin-up, is the weighted dips. Weighted dips is for me the best exercise ever, both as a prime mover or as a second or even assistant exercise for your upper body pressing muscle. In all point, it is superior to bench press. The first point will be on the pressing angle. You can do much more weight on the weighted dips than on a bench press, because if you can do about 2 plate bench press or 2 plate and a half bench press, you can do something like 3 plate dips, and it will always be slightly heavier than your bench press. And if you can go above like a 3 plate bench, you will most likely have 4 plate dips. So you know, it's always add up and add up. For someone like me, if I do a 3 plate bench, which I am capable of in reverse grip, the total weight is of course 3 plate, which is 140 kilo. If I do 4 plate dips, it is my body weight plus 80 kilo, and it is about 160 and some scraps kilogram, so 20 kilo at least heavier. So just on that side, you can see that the dips is easier for overloading. The second point is that on a bench press for your chest, it is easy for you to actually overpower everything with your triceps or your delt. You can see a lot of bench press elite champion who has medium decent chest development, but they have humongous triceps and shoulder. And the reason why is that if you want to bench like a powerlifter, if you want to bench as much weight as possible, you have to actually not do a form that will bias as much as possible the pec, because you will increase the ROM and you will be much more fragile. You will risk much more injury, especially on the shoulder tendon and even the pec tendon. While on a dip, you can't escape the tension. There is nothing in the bottom that you can bounce off or you can pose with. So you basically trigger something that is called the myotatic reflex, which means that the muscle fiber, when they are very stretched, they have by reflex to contract immediately to escape a position that is considered to be a dangerous position, a precarious position for the body. Hence why exercise like the Romanian deadlift, for example, or the incline curl for biceps are so effective for most people. You can trigger this myostatic reflex, and this is the same thing for dips. Weighted dips allowed me to use my chest because you just have no choice. You can't compensate with your shoulder, or you will just injure yourself because something will feel wrong and you will immediately feel it in your shoulder. So weighted dip for me as a horizontal upper body pressing movement is actually close to an S tier movement. If you put it first or second or third in your training, you can just have it and there is no good reason, except if it's hurt or if you're really plateauing and burned from it, to keep it away from your trainings. The fifth exercise that I have for you is the French press, or the overhead dumbbell extension. This exercise alone is, in my opinion, responsible for at least half the gains I made on my triceps. My triceps are a strong point. There is no denying that. It is easy for me to do my presses with literally everything triceps and very little work on the shoulder or the chest, but a part of the pressing and the compound movement, the isolation component would be the best with the French press. First, you put the triceps in a very stretched position. You can activate the myostatic reflex and you can make this exercise very elbow friendly. Simple. You go with a seated variation and you get your hip slightly forward, so you incline a bit your torso. That allows you to have a lot of stretch still in the triceps, but a little less stress on the elbow. And it will also allow you to use a much heavier dumbbell, which will not hit your head, rather than being standing straight and having hit your neck or your upper back. The second thing you can do for it to be very effective but not so elbow stressful is to actually use a cable, or if you have the luck of that, a machine. This way you will have a softer resistance and you will be able to even accommodate this resistance. You can also use elbow sleeve, you can go with tempo work, you can do it at the end of a workout when you're already properly warmed up, but there is no way you can just go by this exercise and tell me you get no gains from it. Most of my mass, most of that you see here, is thanks to heavy presses and French press. And that's it. All the rest was a slight addition, you know, and it was to avoid having too much accommodation and doing the same thing basically. The following exercise that I want to talk about is the wall curl, and by wall curl I mean a strict curl against a wall. Now this might be a bit surprising for you, but I have actually taken interest into strict curling when I simply stumble upon a lot of Russian and Eastern athletes that specialize on this movement who have gigantic arms. And most of them are also into the arm wrestling world, so you know, go figure. This exercise for me was a game changer. For the longest time I had weak biceps, so they're weak, they're short, and they were a weak point, so which means that I have everything against me in sort. Weighted chin up would not hit them as much as I wanted. Any kind of curl movement would sometime, or most of the time, be actually working much more my forearm and my front delt. So I had to find variations that will allow me to basically be sure that most of the work, or all the work, are done by the biceps. And this is what happened with the wall curl. You go against the wall and you make sure that nothing is moving except your shoulder and your elbow. And the range of motion is basically the same as a normal curl, maybe a bit reduced. But since there is a pause at the bottom, you can be sure that the brunt of the work is done by the biceps. And in terms of result, it is quite simple. When I started to do this exercise, my arms were fluctuating between something like 43.5 centimeters, which is about 17 inches, and slightly more, 44 centimeters. After 2 months of doing them every 8 to 10 days, I was able to add 10 kilo on them. On my working set, I went from 3x5 50 kilo to 3x5 60 kilo, and just by doing that I added half a centimeter or a fifth of an inch to my arm, which are now 44.5 centimeters, and it's just purely by adding strict curl. And despite the elbow tendinitis and other heel issues I have done, I have sustained, I kept this 44.5 centimeter of arm measurement, and it is all thanks to the fact that even with the gym and the barbells that needs to be cumbersome enough because I have valgus, I have been able to maintain that, and it is all thanks to this movement. And when you see guys that have a huge strict curl, none of them have small biceps, none of them. Maybe, or these guys may be the exception to the rule. You know, like you see someone who is doing strict curl with 1.5 plates or even 2 plates, they have humongous biceps. There is no, the muscle can't escape basically the tension. And this reminds me of a very big black dude that I knew before in one of my previous gym, and the guy was like, his arm were so big that he basically had 4 legs. And one time I saw him do preacher curl strict, about 2/3 or 3/4 of the range of motion with 36 kilo dumbbell. 36 kilo dumbbell, so like about 80 pounds per arm, you know. So this gave me the hint that actually strict curling were much more efficient for biceps growth than normal curling. And this is why I will give you as variation the preacher curl, the pretty vertical bench, and the preacher curl on the machine. Why? Because each time you will do them, everything will be aligned perfectly resistance-wise with your biceps and with the angle of the resistance. So this means that if you're doing preacher curl on a 60-degree inclined bench or even higher, your biceps can't escape the tension, your shoulder, if you're staying stacked and straight, can't help, and your forearm, if you're supinated enough, cannot work for you. So this is actually why I have been able to keep growing my arm more and more, and it is just by optimizing this biceps work component. The strict curl against the wall were the game changer for me. Now, moving on to the lower body component movement. The first exercise I want to talk about is the front squat. Now, some of you may be actually surprised because right at the beginning of the video I said easy to learn, easy to apply, and actually easy to target the muscle that we want. And front squat are obviously for quads, but the core and the back will be most often a very limiting factor without talking about the balance. So why front squat? Well, first thing first, I have never been able to do SSB squat properly because I never had a SSB bar. So that might be why. The second thing is that for at least 3 years, even maybe 4, I have had sustaining and recurring knee problems. It was either patellar tendon tendinitis above and or below the knee, or a kystic inflammation that I actually had to go surgery and to remove it because it was just going to be unbearable. I could not extend fully my knee and I could not flex it fully. So it was a nightmare and it plagued my squat training for years. Hence why, even if I really like to train my lower body, my squat is very weak compared to a lot of things I can do. And my knee problems are more or less gone right now, but still it left a lot of time lost basically with my strength progression, and I actually began training with weak anterior chain, so quads and abs, and very strong posterior chain. So for my first year of training, basically 6 months in of training, I could do 4 sets of 8 with 2 plates on the back squat, and everything was in the lower back and the glutes. I was basically doing a standing hip thrust, and I could not, for the ever love out of me, not do quads with it. The moment I switched on front squat, in about 2 months, my legs as a whole changed dramatically in terms of look and in terms of strength. And I actually began front squat with 70 kilo, so 1 plate and scraps. From that point on, I have been focusing front squat for years, and at my peak, so me at the lightest and the heaviest front squat, I was doing 8 sets of 3 with 2 plates and a half, full range of motion, and my quads were humongous. I actually had to stop training them so hard for at least years after that to catch up on the upper body part and the hamstring. So that's how powerful front squats are. But the issue is that after with the knee problem, I had to stop doing them, and I could only do them sporadically. And each time I go by to do them again, well, actually I have a good machine now to work with, but still I can still pull off a 6x3 with 2.5 plates, and my max on them is 3 plate, clean form, no bounce, no dive bomb, full range of motion again, and I will pretty most likely be working on them again, and my goal will be to do 4 plates one day with them because it's so badass and so good. Front squats are really effective exercise because you are right into the alignment of the quads. This means that you can't cheat. If you do a front squat properly, you cannot cheat. You can go with your back, you can go with your hip extensor, so like your hamstring and your glutes, and you can't really bounce in the bottom if you're doing a clean form. So this exercise can be seen on the prehab athletic power aspect that then lead to a lot of muscle growth rather than the sheer bodybuilding hypertrophy speedrun kind of spirit you could have if you exercise. If you are strong on front squat, you have a freaky core, you have a freaky strong back, especially the mid back, and you have fantastic quad strength. Each time you will go on a quad biased movement, so pendulum squat, hack squat, Smith machine squat, even a high bar squat with heels elevated, you will have no problem with your quad strength because front squat makes sure that everything on that part is top notch. And you will have superior ankle mobility, core rigidity, and elbow and thoracic spine mobility because you actually have to keep the barbell up and the elbow up with each time. If you go with a weightlifting stance, you know, the clean stance, and if you do not have a mobility or it's too stressful for your wrist, you can go cross body, which is pretty uncomfortable, or use straps and put them forward and you grab the handle and you're like this. So this is kind of an SSB squat or for poor people basically. I've done all three. I prefer the clean style. The ones with the straps are also good, but yeah, I guess that it's just me who never had the chance to really go hard and long enough on an SSB or a good hack squat machine to say, you know, obviously it's going to be better. But for the little time I was able to train with a SSB, obviously it's better. You have a much easier time to breathe and to actually get under the bar and press up without, you know, balancing on left and right. You are not getting as tired than on the front squat. And for the hack squat, I guess it's the ovaries of my knee because I was able to do them. My top weight was 3.5 plates for 6 clean reps. But each time I would stop my set, it would not be because of my quad, it would be because I would start to feel something bothering me in the knee. So yeah, obviously hack squat and SSB squat would be much better, but in my opinion, I am still partial for the front squat because this is what really transformed my lower body when I just started out training, and this is what kept me from having a very ugly weak point right from the start that would have been a nightmare to catch up compared to the rest of my body. The second exercise that I really like for lower body is the RDL, and this is an exercise that you will see come back again and again and again in all those top 10 tier list of this amazing community. Why RDL? Well, I'm going to say exactly the same thing I guess than the others. First thing first, you can basically isolate or bias as much as possible the posterior chain. So this means that this is a deadlift that will be pretty low stress, that will be much easier to learn than a conventional deadlift, and much better in terms of hypertrophy component than any other deadlift variation, and you will have exactly what you want, how you want it. If you want to grow thick erectors, it will be a great exercise. If you want to grow glutes, it will be a great exercise. If you want to grow your hamstring, it will be a great exercise. You can even bias each of these muscle groups a bit more than the others by changing your torso angle, the range of motion, and also your knee flexion component. So this exercise is basically the tool that you need for your posterior chain, and you can even target or fine-tune it as much as you want. The second aspect that I already talked about seconds ago is the range of motion. It is very easy to have a complete range of motion and work beautifully, but it is also possible to adjust this range of motion to basically alleviate maybe your back fatigue, or target a bit more something that you want, or even go slightly heavier to get accustomed to an heavier weight than you're used to do. gives you time, and then you can slowly but surely increase the range of motion over time. So this could be, for example, you with doing I don't know, 4 plates, and you really want to do 4 plates and a half. So you go with 4 plates and a half, you bend over, but you do not go that low after the knee level. And then with time you can go about a third of a shin, then you can do about half of a shin, and then you can basically go as low as you will be eating the plate on the floor. Or you can even elevate yourself and do deficit Romanian deadlift. So, you know, there is so much variation you can do with the pose too, with the chains, with the band. I mean, this is the tool that you want to do for your posterior chain. And there is also the fact that with the stretch, as you bend more and more forward, and the fact that it is constant tension, you can't rest, there is no reset at bottom, like a stiff-legged deadlift, for example. This means that it will also be fantastic for your upper back and even your rear delt, because you will be stretching your traps from the beginning up to the end of your set. And I have seen also people, and it's also my case, that when you're keeping the barbell very, very close, you know, so you're engaging your lats, you're also engaging a bit your long head of the triceps. And it is not uncommon for me to do RDL and then having a pump in my triceps and even having them slightly sore the next day. So this exercise is just awesome. Now, some of you may be actually surprised, because I am known for loving rack pull and especially block pull, doing odd lifting. I did a lot of heavy hack deadlift and Jefferson deadlift, especially from blocks, and I would be pulling ridiculous amount, like 9 plate, 8 plate for volume work, like 6 by 3, 8 by 3, 8 by 2, stuff like that, and also heavy, ultra heavy shrugs with not a so good form, with again minimum of 7 plates and going easily for 6 sets of 5 with barely half a minute of rest. The thing is that these exercises are great, but if I was to choose just one that can be suited for a lot of things altogether, it would be the RDL. This doesn't mean that the other exercises are not useful. I still like them, but in a hypertrophy context, bodybuilding context, remember, RDL would be much better. And it will also be much better to accommodate with the joint fatigue you can have on your ankle, your knee, your hips, and of course your lower back, than on the other exercise. And the final exercise that I have for you are the Bulgarian split squat. Now, I choose this exercise especially for the glute hypertrophy aspect, because I really like to train my glutes. I like to have powerful glutes. It is the best movement, it is the best muscle that you can train in terms of lower body strength, in terms of lower body prehab, in terms of lower body athleticism, in terms of functional strength, you know, and it is also a key muscle in terms of you growing older as healthy as possible, because lower body strength and especially gluteal strength is directly correlated to your life expectancy in good health without needing someone to assist you. So glutes are key, and glutes look good. And Bulgarian split squat is a fantastic exercise, if not the best in my opinion, to train your glutes and to also train your lower body with minimal lower body stress and lower back stress and spine stress, but also by bulletproofing your ankle, your knees, your hip, and your lower back. This exercise will basically be your weighted stretch myostatic reflex exercise for your glutes, but also your quads. Each time I do them, whatever, if I do them light, for volume, for heavy work, whatever I do, the next day and the day after, and sometimes even 3 days after, I'm still sore. And of course, soreness is not necessarily a good indicator of muscle growth, but for me and many people, soreness is actually a good indicator for the muscles that you will grow the most, meaning that all the muscle I can get the most sore the easiest are also my best muscle, my biggest muscle. And Bulgarian split squat grew my glutes and my quads the best compared to a lot of other exercise, and with minimal joint stress. What I like to do is to do it in a Smith machine. This way I have no problem with the balance aspect and also the setup aspect, because if you do it with a barbell free weight, the balance is of course very, very key. You just can't lose balance, but there is also the setup. You have to work out with a barbell which can be pretty heavy, and then you have to set up your back leg and then go down under control. you know, and then when you're done, you have to still have some remaining energy to go back and then to rack the barbell again. It can be pretty tedious. The problem also that can arise with dumbbell is the fact that the dumbbell will put you down, and it will be harder and harder for you to breathe. And also the fact that if you are limited by your dumbbell weight in the gym, you can maybe go up to 50 kilo per arm or 60 kilo per arm if you're lucky, but then what do? You know, and even the setup aspect can be pretty tricky even with dumbbell. There is also, of course, the choice to just go with one big dumbbell in one arm and then to stabilize with the other, but then you're even more so limited by the weight you can use. So it can only be used really as an ancillary exercise for high volume or at least high rep as an assistant work. But yet, as a prime exercise, like an exercise you really focus hard to build strength on, to have muscle, I really encourage you to use it in the Smith machine. Slightly tilt Smith machine, it will be even better. And that's about it really. This exercise to target the VMO, to target the whole quads, to even target the adductor, to target the glutes, is fantastic. And it's not for nothing that the weightlifting athletes of the Eastern Europe and even the Russia started to do it to increase and improve their both their squatting potency, but also their split stance catch power. And if today most of the athletes you could see that are doing, for example, track field, so sprinting most likely, or jumping, speed cycling too, bodybuilder obviously, powerlifter, weightlifter, rugby, football, all of these are doing Bulgarian split squat, and that's, you know, success is true. So yeah. That's it for now. I hope the video was of help. I hope you enjoy the content. Please leave a like and subscribe if you do. I will, of course, publish more video as time goes by. Thank you again for the support. We are soon to be 3,000 on this channel, and I feel blessed again. Thank you again for you, Bold Omni-Man, for requesting and allowing me to join into this little glorious bandwagon. And yeah, I'll see you soon for another video. Take care, bye bye.